And let's encourage you to basically to ask your questions, something that you were doing very successfully for other discussions. So I would encourage you to do that as well. 60% is real, the rest is greenwashing. This is the problem you outlined.
16.
16. That's still a lot.
That's not a big number.
That's even, yeah, that makes the situation even worse. And you are saying that we need to be very careful, deliver the right messages to the farmers. Let's get straight to the problem and let's all give an advice each. What kind of messages and how should we be careful? How would you contribute to that advice, understanding the issue with the failures of carbon farming? I think Mr. Lapinskas, you can kick off because you're quite skeptical about carbon farming as far as I remember.
Yes, right. So, of course, the number 16% really working for our main goal for taking carbon from the atmosphere and fighting climate change. This is a small number, but from another hand, we understand and we must understand that this is just the beginning. Everything starts. And in every start, we have malfunctions. System doesn't work in the way like it should be. So let's talk how it should work. I see the system when it's regulated on the European level in a form of directive or regulation, what European Commission actually is preparing and doing, added by the legislation of national authorities, with the very clear and very transparent national register, national registers from the European register of carbon removals, those CO2 tons which we're going to trade, with the specific auditing mechanism and auditing companies in every country, which can confirm or not the working mechanism, let's say. And only after that, through the specific financial mechanism, let's say, kind of exchange, finally farmer or another subject who is saving carbon, really saving carbon, can receive award in the form of money. So only with these tools working together, with the recognition of national authorities, with the overall regulation from the European Union, this system will work. And even in this system, I think we will have some percentage of malfunction, or let's say cheating or fake, let's say. Yes, it will happen. But in any way, without such a system, without the necessary instruments, let's say, which work together, we will not build the real carbon renewal system.
You kind of mentioned several instruments. What would the first step be? The auditing mechanism that you refer to?
Yes.
Would that be something that should be done first?
Yeah, but I say that all these parts of the one mechanism. I mean, mechanism is one, but necessary parts are those which I mentioned. So legislation on the EU level, national level,
yes.
The auditing mechanism, the register, national register and European register, and the exchange for rewarding, for trading.
Mr. Pranauskas, would you agree that these instruments or the combination of these instruments would make the carbon credit system functioning better? And I know that you have provided organizers a slide, so if it would be possible to show that slide right now in the beginning, right? That would be lovely. But you can, I think, begin your interruption.
Thank you very much. It's funny to me. Tomorrow I will have a meeting organized by Copa Cogeca regarding Agri-ETS. I hope you know what it means. It means possible taxation of agricultural emissions. So.
We have a slide, by the way,
yeah.
Just in case you were wondering.
I will continue in Lithuanian, since every coin has two sides. When we are talking about carbon sequestration, we should talk about carbon emissions or CO2 emissions. This is very important thing, and I'll try to explain. Now I will continue in Lithuanian.
We have carried out an analysis, and you know that in 1990, the year 1990 is an important year in the EU. That's the reference year against which we are counting. This is the benchmark year for evaluating emission reductions. And this is the table that represents statistics from the NIR submission reports for the years 2023, 2018, 2013, and 2008. This is data for all EU countries, and these are not emissions. This is nitrogen that is emitted and from all the crops, and which is then used for calculation of emissions adjusted to global warming. And what do we see in this table? We see fluctuations of these figures. It seems that the year 1990 should be something stable, but it is not. It means that emissions are fluctuating as well. We have evaluated methane emissions from cows, from manure, from plant residues, and we even analyzed the changes in the soil of arable lands. And the data for all countries is fluctuating, which means that we do not have a reliable system. From 2008 to 2013 to 2023, N2O global warming potential was changing. Well, imagine a farmer in 2012 decided to reduce methane emissions in his milk farm. He invested into technologies and managed to reduce methane emissions by 20%. And then the government says, well done, you, but let's calculate methane emissions in 2016. The methane global warming potential increases by 18%. And as a result, the farmer became a loser. And around 2020, the global warming potential increased to 28. So basically, it means that the farmers' investments are wasted. So we do not have a stable methodology to calculate on farm level. We do not have a methodology to calculate emissions on the farm level. And the last thing that I want to say, this system has an emission. We do not take account of CO2 that is generated or accumulates in food products. Agriculture emits about 100,000 tons of CO2. According to the US data, average American uses about 40 kilograms of CO2. From where? Well, this is what he gets with the food. 50 kilos of CO2. It's about 50 kilograms of carbon. If you convert it into CO2, it's about 170 kilos. So, and we failed to take into account all of this. Okay, so we do not have a stable system. We do not have a stable system for assessing the emissions, and we omit CO2 in food products. Thank you very much for your insight, for your intervention.
He or she is genius. Tai truputį, jeigu dar paaiškintumėt, kas čia konkrečiai yra vaizduojama šitoj lentelėje.
Could you please explain what is represented in this table? Because I really don't, nobody does really understand what these arrows mean. Well, look at the year 2008. We have so much nitrogen that was emitted from the residues of plants. But if you take the inventory from the year 2013 and 2018, you see that in some countries it increased, in some countries it decreased. And everything comes from the national reports. But all these numbers that are in this table is the nitrogen that was emitted from the residues of plants since 1990. But the last figure is differs from the initial one by 5 times. And to me, that signifies that we do not have a reliable system of calculation or evaluation. And the same goes for methane emissions and so on and so forth. We do not have no stability whatsoever. We cannot explain why the nitrogen emissions are so different when compared to the year 1990. Thank you very much for your enthusiasm.
Spoken yet, and that would be Konstantin. And if I was to summarize what was already said, so basically I would just say that we don't have a stable system, we don't have auditing mechanisms, we don't have the recognition of national authorities, EU registration, there is no register that would help. And then the other gentleman is saying that basically we don't have a reliable system, we don't have a stable system to evaluate the emissions, and the system kind of misses out the CO2 which is generated by food products, as far as I understood. So this is the criticism and incorporated with solutions for the, for the carbon credit system. What is your experience with it?
We can criticize the system for another 3 days, at least, if we can sit down and talk about what's missing and what's lacking. First of all, I want to thank the organizers of the event. It's been great, and it's been extremely helpful to see all these topics, and it's my first time in Lithuania, and I'm really enjoying it. And I've met a lot of great people here. Also, I want to thank Grigoris for the very informative presentation, and I'm actually going to steal a couple of slides from you later on. And I will give some of our experience. Our company started in 2021. We're a very young company, we're a startup. And the focus of the company was to help the farmers transition from conventional farming to regenerative farming. The focus is grain production, because Bulgaria is it's a grain producing country. I do not have any expertise when it comes to animals or to that part of the agricultural sector. So I cannot give any advice on that point. And my business partner, Boris, he comes from a farming background, so he's experienced the problems in a grain-producing farm firsthand. Me, myself, I'm new to agriculture. I'm coming from a finance background, completely different setting. But we managed to combine his know-how in agriculture and sustainable farming with the finance know-how which I had. In the early 2020s, the first carbon credit programs that in agriculture were just starting to be developed. And yes, the voluntary market is open, but it's developing very, very fast. The initiative of the European Union, and the most important word here is framework. It's not the directive, and I'll tell you why. Framework is something that is open, it's not open to interpretation, but it gives limits, plus and minus. And that's important. Why? We saw in our work and our expertise that you cannot tell everyone to do the same thing and to expect the same results. This is conventional farming, and this is what people have been doing for the last 20, 30 years. And yes, the climate was stable, the prices were stable, they were doing all the same thing, and they were getting good results. Not the same results, but good results. Over the last 5 years, things have changed rapidly. And agriculture, it's not what it was. In some parts of Europe, things are getting better. Like here in the Baltics, the weather is getting milder, you're getting more sunny days. For grain production, it gets better.
Well, we also get heat waves, many more than previously in the summer. We also get less cold days and less snow, which we would have preferred. And yes, we are experiencing the effects of climate change in bad
Absolutely. Yes, everyone is experiencing them in different ways. But in the south, it's getting really, really bad. And that's why the approach has to be changed and has to be different. That's why when we were forming our idea about the business and what will be our value proposition, we saw that data provides a key component into how we could give value to the farmer. Because Boris, coming from a farmer's background, his first priority is how can we give, it's not how to make money from the farmers, it's how to give value to the farmers. So if they give you 1, you give them 1.5 back, for example. And we saw that the missing piece, which will give us this, it's like making bread. You mix a few components and something with bigger value happens. And that piece was data. So we started to collect data from Bulgaria. Bulgaria is a small country, but we saw that it varies a lot when it comes to soil types, climate types, crop rotations, things that people do in different parts of the country. And we had to take all of these things into account when we were making decisions on how to guide a farmer in that transition process. Very often, we compare this to the process of becoming a professional sports person. Like if all of us here, we want to become, let's say, an Olympic weightlifters, all of us will take different times.
Yes.
You know, for you it might be 1 year, for me it might be 3 years, for him it might be 5 years. But if we have the proper nutritionist, the proper training coach, the proper guidance, all of us will be able to do it without getting injuries. In agriculture, every change, every transition, it has to be as subtle as possible in order not to have very costly mistakes. Because we've seen farmers fail because they try to do something rapidly. And when they see the regulations coming down and the regulation says, from next year, you have to start doing this. You stop doing this, you have to start doing this. And often, more often than not, the people that write the regulations, they have no farming background, they haven't been to the farms, and they don't know how to make the regulations smoothly interact into the farmers' operations. And this is where I think, like the era of precision agriculture, where all the machines had data, satellite data, there's so much soil analysis data that we could use, and now it's time to move on to decision farming. So we take all this data, we analyze it, we calculate it using AI, using different tools and technology tools, and we give individual decisions to farmers so they could successfully start that transitioning process. And there is no end to the process because climate is always changing, so we have to be able to adapt as smoothly as possible.
But so carbon as credit, that system, in your experience, is a failure or not?
Oh no, it's just starting. As Mr. Lepinskas, said, the system is just starting now. So yes, there will be some bumps here and there, But I think because we should look at carbon credits as two things. You have carbon removal and carbon reduction. Agriculture is the only sector that can create carbon removal. Carbon reduction, every sector can create carbon reductions, but carbon removal, agriculture is one of the few sectors that could do that. So the value in that agricultural transition is huge. If we are able to sustainably get farmers to do these practices, the value for the whole agri-food value chain will be huge, because the data that's collected from the farmers, that could be passed on to the second layer, the factories that give the added value to the grains, for example. And then we go to the food production companies. Then we go to the retailers. All of these stakeholders, if they want to correctly address their scope 3 emissions and the scope 3 emissions and the whole system of emission calculations, they will need that data from agriculture. It all starts from there.
Grigoris, are we sensing the untapped potential of digital tools here?
By all means, by all means. Every digital tool gives the potential to analyze more data quickly in real time. So in the future, I do believe there will be more and more integration of digital tools, and it's not about asking the farmer to pay for these tools. It should be the larger conglomerates, the retailers, they should be giving these tools, because at the end of the day, they'll be the biggest beneficiaries of the data collected from these tools.
Would you have something to add, and maybe you want to comment on what the guys previously said about, the specific elements that were listed, the auditing mechanism, recognition of national authorities, legislation, the special register, to make the system function better?
Okay, obviously all these parameters are very crucial, but I think that if we look at the value chain approach, if we look at the beginning and the end of the value chain, we will see two very important actors. The one is the farmer, and the other one is the citizen, the consumer. And I think that both these sides of the value chain need lots of education, lots of skills, lots of training, lots of understanding, lots of events like that to become aware of what happens. I will now pass a message that's maybe not very popular, but I believe that the price of food products needs to be increased in order to incorporate the extra work that farmers will be doing in order to remove carbon from the atmosphere. And this can be, the farmers can be compensated through a carbon credit system, but they can also be compensated through a certification program, similar to the one that when we're buying organic food, we're ready to pay a little bit more, or when we're buying a naturally produced wine, we're ready to pay a little bit more. If we're buying climate resilient, climate smart food products, we need to be prepared to pay more. And we need to understand that once we are paying cheap for our food, what we are doing is we are stealing from our health and we are stealing from our environment. Only 1/3% of the externalities of the food in the way we produce it today is reflected in the price. The other 2/3 are just being paid around with no real accounting and no real calculation. That's why in the carbon farming concept, I think that education, skills, communication, and training the both sides of the value chain will play a crucial role and will accelerate the adoption together, of course, with the legislative framework, with the auditing mechanisms and all the other very important things that are needed.
Training both sides of the value chain. I'm going to mark this down as an important aspect. And previously, Mr. Pranauskas was raising his hand and Mr. Lapinskas too. So now this is the time to react. Let's start with you, Mr. Pranauskas.
Thank you very much. Principally, don't accept my information as criticism, pure criticism. We just pointed out to the shortcomings of this current system, which does not take into account. Can anybody explain why these data fluctuate so significant? These data are old. They are of 1990. The same situation is this 2005. Which you all also know that this our reference here. So we are asking for national carbon farming system to establish reliable, exhaustive, stable, I would say, national carbon calculation or evaluation system. Just what we are doing from 2018. Just there we are. We have our interests. But if we take, sorry, I will finish. If we take into account only carbon sequestered in the soil, probably farmers will have to pay for carbon emissions, for CO2 emissions, according to this system, calculated by this system. We cannot take just one part of the coin. We have to look on both sides. Thank you.
You don't have to apologize for making a statement. This is why you are in the panel and your views are very much accepted. So this is fine and thank you so much for that. Mr. Lepinskas, the National Carbon Farming Calculation System.
Yeah, look, for me it's absolutely clear why those data changing. Those data changing everywhere. That was example from the agriculture. I can present examples from forestry, for example. You know, it used to say in Lithuania more than 10 years ago that we have annual increment of 6.1 solid cubic meter of wood of forest per hectare per year. Do you know the data now? Now it's around about 10 solid cubic meters per hectare per year. You can ask what changed. That data changed because the climate changed, because different species, because the age of the forest and so on and so on. So we need to build a system which can adapt itself, the system, to the changing data. And I do not imagine that all farmers will receive carbon money like it is today, that our CAP, Common Agriculture Policy, gives everyone for attempts of doing something, not for result. No, no, no. When we talk about the carbon farming, we need to talk about the results. And results which farmer achieves in order doing something which is confirmed already. Not all the steps or all the modus operandi will be confirmed, but some will be confirmed by the science. So he will be doing by the science some things, he will be audited, he will be calculated, and after, when somebody from the industry who needs those carbon credits will buy through exchange, then he receives the money. That's the point. This is not for attempt, this for real results. So this is a different approach
Thank you both for being so passionate, and I'm going to ask for your opinion, Grigoris and Konstantin. Basically what I'm hearing is that Mr. Lepinskas is criticizing the carbon credit system for evaluating the process rather than the very, very specific tangible result. I mean, giving farmers money for the process, right? Not for the result.
He's criticizing, and I'm really supporting his statement. I think he's criticizing the system that was up to now.
Yes.
Because
I'm criticizing the existing system, which is bad.
Exactly. It managed to create a sector that's reliant on subsidies for trying to do something without a proper regulation and measuring the actual results. And going forward, that really needs to be changed. The problem is once you create such a large focus group of people that have been used to doing exactly the same thing and receiving money for it without the actual, I mean, I can tell for Bulgaria, this is pretty much what happened. A lot of farmers, based on the size of the farm, they receive subsidies without actually changing anything or just fiddling with the administration data. And now when we go there and tell them, okay, what are the problems in your farm? And then he starts. It's dry, it doesn't rain, da-da-da. The soil this, the soil that. I can't grow these crops anymore, da-da-da. Okay, so you were giving all this money through all this time and you didn't change anything. And now we have to tell you that you have to change this and this and this and this. And you're reluctant and you're scared. And that's the mass. The current system has failed the farmers. That's just the blank truth, really. And going forward,
Yes, we have to speak about going forward, because when we say that the system is no longer relevant anyway, then the question that I received from the audience is a very good one. Describe the problem in one sentence and the solution you want to achieve.
Okay.
One sentence is not enough. That's all I can say. Agriculture is not a one-sentence business. It's a complex business. That's the thing. It's like saying to an overweight person, you should eat less and train.
Well, that would help in a lot of cases.
Yeah, but that's not the whole truth. You know, different people should approach the problem in different ways if they want to have a sustainable solution going forward.
In order to provide incentives for farmers, they are promised income from selling carbon credits in certain prices. Well, this is something that we have touched upon as well. How can we tackle the fluctuating price of credits? Could the scheme end up to a sort of gambling exercise for farmers? How the market could be regulated?
First of all, I don't believe that farmers should be driven by the fluctuating prices of the credits. Just to go back one step, the human history is a series of trial and errors towards progress. And now we're trying to invent a new system, we're trying to improve things, and obviously we will fail dramatically, we will learn from our failures, and we will improve in the future. So in that sense, yes, the more reliable that the credit markets are, the more stable the price would be. But I think that farmers need a more holistic motivation to apply carbon farming solutions and to applying climate resilient solutions rather than the price they will get from carbon credit. There should be a holistic set of subsidies and incentives, training, consumer acceptance, and some extra revenue from carbon credit that all together will direct farmers toward the right direction.
But look, judging from some of these questions, it doesn't seem like farmers would necessarily need a more holistic approach. For example, I'm assuming this anonymous person may be a farmer. Are there any ways to get carbon credits for beef cattle farms?
Even though we do not have a program like that, there are ways and there are methodologies for rotational grazing, which obviously can help sequester more carbon in the soil, and it's measured. It works. There is a program in the US that works, and we're in talks with the Association of Cattle Ranchers in Hungary to incorporate the same program with them. So there is, but it's only for rotational grazing. I'm sure the person knows what I mean when I say that.
Mr. Pranauskas.
I'm sorry, but I don't agree. If you are familiar with IPCC guidelines, you must know that grazing or manure nitrogen excretion through grazing for these calculations applied nitrogen emission factor is 2%. And for example, for manure applied by normal equipment is only 1%. It means that these nitrogen emissions will be twice higher with grazing. It's true, it's according to IPCC methodology.
But I'm sorry, looks like we are talking about carbon, but not nitrogen. So I think
we are talking about CO2, related. I think.
Yes, so CO2 is a carbon. But look, I would like to add one more thing. We need to understand that this system of future carbon capture and storage and how to say the trade of carbon credits, this will account only if those attempts or steps done by a farmer will be not just for 1 year or 2 years. We need to talk about the system of long-lasting period. Let's say when we talk about the forestry, it means that we talk at least for 20 years or something like that, because what we need to sequester carbon for longer period. So therefore, I say that even in agriculture will be developed some specific clear steps, or let's say ways of operation in agriculture, which will be directed for the long-lasting results. And this will be an object for carbon trading.
I don't think anyone is disagreeing that it should be long-term. I will give you the word, but Konstantin
I just
has
wanted
raised
to
his
give
hand
a little experience from our business when we started introducing the carbon program to the farmers in the right beginning, and then we started working with a few of them. We saw a mindset change in some of them. So some of them, in the beginning, they were asking, how much money will I make, right? And then when we started explaining the process and we started adapting the whole technology with them in order to change the tillage practices, how, why, based on the data that we collected, how to change the fertilization rate, how to change the products that they use, they trusted us to analyze the data and to help them in the process. And in the time, we saw that their mindset changed from how much money will I make to how can I be better? Because carbon sequestration, carbon removal, it's based on soil health. That's the underlying asset that the farmer has. It's not the tractors, it's not the warehouses, it's the soil. And we saw that it really moved from how much money will I make to how can I be better for my soil so I can be better in the program so I can potentially make more money. And a funny fact that most of our clients, they haven't studied agronomy, classical agronomy. They are businessmen, we have lawyers turned farmers, we have traders turned farmers, people who understand the business, they understand their asset, and they know how to protect their asset. Number one rule, protect your assets, and the asset in agriculture is the soil. Once we focus on that, and that's why carbon is the currency, as we mentioned, because carbon is essential for soil health. Nothing happens without carbon, without organic carbon in the soil. The plants are healthy if the soil is healthy. The yield is sustainable and good if the soil is healthy. So the underlying focus really of people, if we can change the mindset from the money aspect to you're protecting, you're improving, you're doing good. Biodiversity angle is crucial as well. I think that will help farmers incorporate the practices.
So we have kind of seen training both sides of the value chain, as Grigoris said, we've seen it in action by your example. Mr. Pranauskas.
I'm sorry, long-term agreements are absolutely unacceptable for agriculture. I just gave you an example. During 10 years, global warming potential of methane increased by 30%. Who will guarantee that after next 10 years, it will not increase by other 30%? So it means that if we have any long-term agreement, we have any guarantees. This is used in all formulas regarding methane emissions. It will be used. There is no other way.
Mr. Pranauskas, but Grigoris said a system that could adapt to changing data. That could be long-term, right? If the data changes.
I mean, of course, it could adapt and could be part of, because, you know, when you make an agreement with those who are buying your carbon credits, because you already promised for long-term, let's say for 10 years, to change something and to save, let's say, 1,000 tons of CO2. So you're selling those 1,000 tons of CO2 during 10 years to the buyer. And that's it. And that's it. It doesn't matter how will change methane emissions in Lithuania and the world. It doesn't matter. Perhaps even price will change. But you made an agreement, and if it's worth for you, so you made an agreement. That's it. That's the point.
A short comment.
I will wrap briefly. Let's talk very clearly. We are talking about netto emissions, positive or negative. I mean, carbon sequestration against carbon emissions. If I have, for example, high emissions, what I will sell or I will pay for these emissions?
Right? Right, so you need to save.
Just because of somebody have changed this global warming potential of methane? Yes,
This is calculated on the basis of your personal farming house. That's it.
but this will be always used in all formulas regarding
No,
methane.
no,
Absolutely.
this is
Grigonis,
absolutely different system.
now it's time you said something like, both of you are right to a certain extent,
It's totally
and then
different.
make a deeper insight.
Thank you for this. I think that the best message we can get if we look a little bit on the macro level of this discussion is that we also need to build the trust. It is totally understandable that our farmers have been like the Guinea pigs in experimental lab of the environmental science for many years. And that has created a lot of distrust on their behalf. And this is the most difficult thing to build. We have lots of developers, we have lots of clever businessmen from the finance, from the agronomy and everything. We can build business models, we can build technologies. But trust takes time and effort, and it requires both sides approaching the common goal. I think what Konstantin mentioned earlier, that farmers who are applying sustainable methodologies, they are technically increasing the price of their and the value of their fundamental assets. And if we look at this perception, like in any other kind of business, if you have a restaurant, if you have a warehouse, you would like to keep the building in the best possible condition, and you would like to make the building nice in order for customers to come, but also for you to sell it one day for a higher value. We need to educate our farmers to apply the same approach. And this is something that farmers can see the value for them and for their families, for the sons and the daughters, for their future. This will help us build the trust. The message we get from farmers makes sense. It comes from a right approach. It comes from the approach that it's always easier to accuse the smallholder farmers than to accuse the big corporates who are actually the bigger emitters. But that's why we need to work hand in hand with them, to discuss, to listen to their concerns, and to negotiate and to make things that are implementable by them, because they will have to implement.
There is a comment that you may or may not agree with. Being a farmer and entrepreneur, long-term guarantees are not feasible. There are no guarantees in business. For an entrepreneur, there will always be a risk.
Sorry, I haven't hit.
There will always be a risk for entrepreneurs. There are no guarantees in business, and you cannot expect anything stable anyway. This is the way I understand the essence of this comment.
Yeah, but principally, if we are talking about markets, I mean, agricultural product markets, they are currently not stable. But we are adding extra instability regarding these emissions. Nobody knows, and nobody knows who and what will require in the future, and how it will evaluate their businesses in this point of view.
Mr. Lapinskas.
So I want to say that we already have examples perfectly working on the European level. I talk about the emission trading system, ETS, which is acting in the sphere of energy. This system absolutely clear, absolutely transparent, and works in the very clear way. For example, I have a cogeneration plant working, producing electricity and heat on heavy oil, let's say. And if I change this to the renewable energy, so I save carbon credits, because this is easy to calculate, and I can sell this for the market, and this become let's say an amount which this amount I can finance my conversion. The same I see also in the agriculture possible. If there is a number of confirmed, let's say, tools or methods how farmers can go through this new way, if those measurements and facts are clear and transparent, so then the system can work perfectly. But just we need to understand that this is not year-by-year system. This is a system with the longer obligations and longer money coming to the farm. I mean, 10 years obligation, 10-year money coming.
Very brief comment, and then we move on to another question.
There are three sources of greenhouse emissions in these inventories. I mean, CO2, N2O, and methane. So you are talking about CO2, and everything is simple in that case, because you are burning something and getting CO2. That's it, principally. But agriculture is a major source of methane and nitrogen suboxide. And there we are applying those coefficients, which I mentioned before, this global warming potential, which is absolutely unstable.
Okay, I will explain very briefly again. With the methane, you can do the same way, where you can calculate. If you change the feeding process of your cows and you save the methane, and this is confirmed by the science, so that's it. You change and you save and you get money. If you do not change, you do not save, you do not get money. That's simple.
Let's stop here for a moment because we will have to start going towards the end soon, and let's try to answer some of the more smaller scale questions. And I think this one may go to Konstantin easily. Can you clarify or provide examples what exact data is valuable for the conventional farmer?
For any farmer. I'm not gonna just say about conventional. And just as a matter for the conversation, I believe that we should look very separately when it comes to grain production and, let's say, cattle farming. The processes will be different in terms of calculation and measurement. Just want to put it out there. But in terms of data, very important is the data from soil analysis. The chemistry data, the biological data, the physical data of the soil properties. This is something that not many farmers are doing. They're not often doing soil analysis, but it's valuable to know the changes, what is actually happening in the soil biology. Even microbial analysis are extremely important for farmers, but that's a tool that they haven't adequately used over the years. Also important is to know your soil type. That's the most basic thing. Is your soil sandy? Is it a clay soil or a wood foresty soil? Climatic information as well. You should know in what climatic zone your farm resides, so you know what is happening on a larger climatic level. We see a lot of farmers. They say, "Oh, my location is the driest location in the country." On the other side of the country, the other guy says, "Yeah, no, my farm is the driest in the country," but they don't understand. They don't know why. Like they say, "Oh, I see the cloud and it rains in my neighbor's fields, but in my field it never rains." It's very easy to see why, at least to know why this is happening. And I think all of this information combined is very important for grain producers to know how to use. This is the data which we analyze through our AI software, basically, in order to make the recommendation to the farmers on how to proceed going forward, what to try, what not to try. We also study allelopathy a lot, how crops interact with other crops, how we could structure the soil, how we could change the levels of pH using cover crops instead of chemical or other products. So the more information a farmer has, the better. The telematic information from their machines, extremely important if they know how to read it, because they could use, for example, simple index, NDVI index, which is a satellite information, which a lot of the farm management systems nowadays have. If they compare that with the telematic information from their machine, which showed them in which section of the field how much yield they got, they could easily get some idea about problems that they should go and check out and address in some of their fields.
Any data units we're missing from the farmer's perspective? Is there anything to be added? Data that is valuable for farmers? Mr. Pranauskas?
Principally, I would say that our farms, we represent those large agricultural companies. They apply these fertilization plants, precision technologies, and so on. So they have much more data. And also, most of them, they are mixed farms, so they are applying manure and of those catch crops and so on. So they have a lot of data and they know what they do, but we see the major problems, what we said, in methodology. We do not have tools to evaluate our efforts, objectively to evaluate. We don't trust this, data.
Lack of methodology, lack of trust, and
I support in this case, because what we're talking about, this future system, of course, we don't know exactly how it will look like.
Yes.
I talk on the basis of, on the level of principles. So I support, yes, we need to find out, and we need to build a trustful system.
I think in the future, the system should be based on technology, so it could accommodate the variety of farming and of farmers. If it's something rigid and fixed, it will not work for everyone in the same way. So it has to utilize data technology in order to be able to functionally change and to functionally work for different farmers in different countries, in different locations adequately.
We have one more, I think one final question before we wrap off. What do the speakers think? Are the national authorities essential or not in the voluntary carbon credit schemes? Can the schemes be trusted if the schemes are managed, for example, by private bodies?
Well, that's a big question. Who do you trust more, the private sector or the public? I don't have an easy answer to that, and obviously the answer varies on a different country, but I'm absolutely convinced, and that's what we do in our project, that the national authorities need to be involved. That's why in our project we involved the Greek Ministry of Environment, and we're also involving in Cyprus the Ministry of Agriculture in order to let's say, harmonize the national legislation with the new European framework in order to mainstream those plans in the national CAP, which gives you a bit of degrees of freedom, but it also you have the framework, and that's how you can distinguish between the framework and the directive. It's like a constitution and a law, let's call it like that. I think that the role of national governments is very essential. This doesn't mean that governments are more trustworthy than private organizations to verify standards. In the standardization business, you have excellent initiatives that are stemming from the private sector. And once, I would say that once you have rules, it really doesn't matter. But I think that this is a typical field that you need to have both working toward the same direction. And you need to align the interests and to align the agendas there. And that takes time and effort.
I will now take one round of answers to one basic question. I mean, we have said a lot, we have disagreed on many things, we have agreed on many things as well. But when we think about this future carbon credit system, what is one keyword or one sentence that you would prefer it to be based on? Konstantin said technologies. All of you have said different other things. But now if you needed to narrow it down to one very, very important element that would make it work better than the previous system, what would it be, Mr. Pronauskas?
I repeat the same: reliable, exhaustive, and stable. And that's it.
Mr. Lapinskas?
I would point trust and transparency.
Thank you. Would you have anything to add to technologies?
Focus on soil health. That's the key, really. The system is a system, and it has to be focused on soil health.
System that could adapt to changing data, is that the keyword that you would pick?
I would say let's try to pick the most agile and the most motivated links in this chain and put them to work together. The startups are one very important link, the farmers is a very important link, the consumers is another very important link. I think that if we put those into alignment in a lockstep, then we can achieve some results faster than if we work in isolation.
I want to really thank you for this very passionate, energetic, and I think meaningful and instrumental discussion. Before we give you a big round of applause, I will just say that this is actually nearly over. There will be some logistics related to probably the evening gathering, and I will invite Christina to provide us with any more details and maybe to wrap up in a sense, or just at least thank everybody for being here. And we will get off the stage now. I will thank you all for your questions and for your really active participation. And this is the time when we thank the panel as well.